So to come back to examples of if you had $1,000, 10,000 or 100,000, how would you look at investing those three amounts? Like, can you do enough with $1,000 if someone has that?
No, so again, I always try to think how to word this, right? Like, if you're limited to $1,000 or $10,000 to invest, that tells me from an entrepreneurial sense that you need to go invest into courses or invest into upskilling yourself to make yourself better at what you do. Because if you invest into things that could make you better and more money, all of a sudden you don't have $1,000 to invest or $10,000 to invest. You have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest because you've increased your value. People don't realize, like, true investing, majority of the time you're looking at like 10% returns, over a year or something, right? Historically, for most asset classes. If you invest, if you had $10,000 and you put it into like traditional kind of stock market, 10% returns $1,000 in a year. Congratulations. After 1 year, you've gone from 10 to 11,000. You do that again, you've now got $12,100. You've gone up $1,100. But if you put $10,000 into $5,000 learning off a great coach, into working with them for 12, 24 weeks, $5,000 into doing a business course, all of a sudden you could be earning far more. For example, I'll give you an example. One of my, clients, I remember in COVID, she was a PT. I think she was making 70, 80K or something. She then worked 2 jobs to be able to afford to work with me. And after a year of working with me, became a Bikini Pro and attacked social media. I share a lot. I think she went from making like 70K to making about 400K in about a year. And the reason for it was, she spent, $5,000 every 12 weeks to work with me. So she spent a good amount of money to work with me, probably $20,000 to work with me for the year. But by then learning from me through my training, she got much more confident. She then got that secondary benefit of me sharing her to my audience. She got that association to work with me. So people, because I wasn't offering high ticket at the time. So, work with me. And all of a sudden she like 5, 6 extra income just from working with a good coach. Because again, it's multifaceted, the benefits. Likewise, like for me, investing into a course, like those courses that I did, those investing into courses, the return wasn't immediate. It was then a year, 2, 3 years later when I released my first program where we did make 400K in the first week. I didn't make 400K in a week. That 400K was from years and years and years of courses. So really, people go, "Oh, you made 400K in the first day or whatever." It's like, no, but they don't see all the costs that you did the year before. So you get that return on that investment at a much later date. But if I never did all those courses, or I never traveled the world doing internships and spending, going to LA and paid, $1,500 a day to do a pro internship for 6 days. And when I was making 80K or whatever, and I was spending everything I could, all those little investments there, 5K, 4K, $2,000 weekend courses, that made me better at what I could do. And then in turn, my value dramatically increased because I became a better coach, a smarter coach, a more confident coach. So then when I did actually then pull the trigger to start doing something, I had that value within yourself. It's like, if you see a celebrity go, they don't have a social media, and all of a sudden they start Instagram, and within like a week, they got like 5 million followers. It wasn't because their content was amazing. It was because of who they were, and then they got on social media. That value to have 5 million social media followers wasn't built from their 5 posts the first 5 days. That value was built off the previous years of being a celebrity, Hollywood, and all that stuff, and all the credentials and acting, whatever. And that's the way often, like with investing, I look at is that really small stuff like that. Like, of course, it depends if you're like, and I'm talking from more of an entrepreneurial sense, like for personal trainer or something like that. Now, if you're a person in like a standard 9-to-5 job, like a school teacher, like my mum was a primary school teacher, making 60K, 70K or whatever, right? 10K there extra, for them, like they're not trying to be super rich people. That they'd invest just into their superannuation fund. They could do they pay more to accelerate their superannuation funds and stuff like that. For a lot of people, that's kind of sufficient. But sorry. The biggest thing I'd say is like, if you wanted like the Coach Mark Carroll formula that I try to get my friends, like two of my friends bought their first properties. One of them is a school teacher. One of them is my friend Leonard, who's a personal trainer, who's making good money as well now. They both bought their first properties recently, and my plan of attack with them is pretty simple: get 3 properties. And so, in terms of 100K, if you wanted a kind of a formula to kind of probably guarantee yourself a retirement, a successful retirement. And this is, again, not guarantee yourself being Elon Musk rich, guarantee yourself in Australia a very, very good retirement. It might be a bit more than 100K, but my formula would be try to get 3 properties, and you want to try to get as early as you can. So let's try to get a $500,000 property. So 20%, that's about 100K. So you try to get a $500,000 property, right? With fees, it might be 125 stamp duty and stuff. But if you get a property, then your goal is, and you put 125K down. Let's ignore the first home buyer stuff, which is kind of coming out, which will add some variables and stuff like that. But you with 125K basically could get a property then and there, and you don't need to put any more money down to get another 2. So what happens is you get that 500K property in a good area where there'll be growth. What you want to do is, like we talk about with fat loss, is create momentum. So you want something that's going to go up quickly. You'd rather something go up really quickly and slow down initially, because then you can take that equity. So let's say that 500K property goes to 650. Let's say it goes to 650 for simplicity. All right. So of that growth, that 150K in growth, you can use about 80% of that as equity. So the bank's money, the bank will give you about 80% of that, which would be about 120K. So it might take you 2 years in a good area to get that 150K growth. You then take equity out, and then you get another property. You get another 500 odd property, and then same thing. And then you've got 2 properties compounding. One property might go up another 80K, another property might go up 100K. You got 180K. Again, you can use 80% of that. And all of a sudden, you're using the bank's money. Again, you pull out to get a third property. So all up, after about 4, 5, 6 years with picking the right areas, you've now got 3 properties you bought for, say, $500,000. But the first one's now worth $750, the second one's worth $650, and the third one you've just got for $500. So all of a sudden, you've got almost, close to $2 million in properties, but you only put down 125K of actual cash. So this is where you use property as your vehicle for pretty much everyday kind of Australians to drive wealth building, because the benefit is that with property, when we're talking equity, things like that, people don't realize that equity is it's tax free. So you're not, it's not earned income. It's the bank's money you're using the bank's money. They're giving you, like, everyone hates on the banks, but they're literally giving you the ability to supercharge your kind of what we call accumulation phase to building your wealth. And so you're using the bank to help fund you to get more and more and more. And over the couple of years, you choose good properties, good areas will grow quickly. Yes, they kind of go in cycles, but if you can get good growth, initially it frees you up to have more equity, to then grow and grow and grow. Basically, with that 125K in, if you get $1.5 million in properties over, basically, if you use the rule of 72, so rule of 72 is basically, if you divide something by 72, that tells you how many years it'll take to double. So if you go, it'll go up about 7% a year. So 7 into 72 is about 10 goes in 10 times. So therefore, your property will kind of double in about 10 years. So basically, 100K could give you $1.5 million in property in about 3-4 years. And then that property in 10 years is worth 3 million. And another 10 years, that property is worth about 6 million if it does that kind of historical average. And so over a 20-year period, that 100K invested is now worth about 6 million. And then you add another 10 years again, when you're at retirement stage, 6 million is now worth about 12 million. And that comes back from your 100K actual cash investment. So that's basically kind of how you'd use property and equity and leverage as kind of an everyday person with not an amazing income, just a little bit of savings that you might take, yes, a fair few years to accumulate. But people, I think, feel like, yeah, it's harder. But the big thing is here with everything I just said, and I just want to throw this out there, is your ability to do this really hinges on you having a little different mindset. And that mindset is not thinking about your first asset being your own home. So if you buy your own home, that's going to actually really, really slow down your ability to actually then do this. Because if you buy a 500K house and your mortgage is 5K a month, say, or you buy a 500K house and someone is living in it and paying your mortgage. So they're two vastly different things. Because then the bank, when they try to give you more lending, they then subtract your own home, what you're paying into that mortgage. So if you're paying, say, 5K a month into that mortgage, which is just a nice number, they subtract that from your income. So your borrowing capacity dramatically drops. Whereas if you have a 500K house that someone else is living in and paying off, that doesn't subtract from your lending capacity or your income. So that's probably the hardest thing trying to teach people is that, if you're trying to become an investor, not getting your own home first is actually probably the way to go, which is kind of quite against what most typical people talk about in finance. The idea around rent vesting, which is quite popular with the younger community, and that this way you can, live in a nice area, but then you're not trying to buy an asset which has
That area.
in that area. Like you could want to live in Bondi Beach but that could be an area which is overvalued and the rent's low, whereas you could buy in a much different area, a lower socioeconomic area, which will give you far superior growth. You don't have to live in that area. You can live in Bondi, rent, buy in a different place, and then, let that kind of compounding occur. So yeah, that's kind of what I'll do with a smaller amount. I'd first go with a 1,000, go do a mini course, to learn something, to upskill. 10,000, same thing. Can you learn from a private mentor to solve bigger problems? Often you encounter bigger problems, which means you need to throw a bit more money, a bit more expertise at it. And then things like 100K, that's where you can start to use things and I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, and the benefit of Bitcoin is it's so volatile. So would I be buying Bitcoin now? No, because it's, where it is in the cycle. But Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin, I think got up to about 125K USD. I remember about 3 years ago up here, it was about 14, 15K USD. So that's, about 8x or something where it was. And so, yeah, so 8x, if you put 100K into that, then when it was 15K, that would be that 100K in 3 years would be worth 800K, which is kind of pretty wild. But again, it's again with things like these, like my kind of big investment advice is that like most people don't think they're they think they're investing, but they're really trading. I buy things to try and own forever. So everything I buy, my intention is to have it and never sell it. Where a lot of people are like, oh, I want to buy this and flip it and do this and sell it. You have all the
Sell low,
tax.
buy high. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's obviously things run its course and stuff like that, but there's the tax around it. And ultimately, like you're getting small wins, but for example, there's kind of like good studies that show like in the American stock market, the best performing portfolios are from people who are actually dead. So people who have the best performing portfolios, so like a portfolio of like all the different stocks they buy and own, the people who do best are the ones who are dead because they don't touch it. They just let it go up and go up. And, so yeah, that's the interesting thing. So yeah, that's kind of what I'd be looking at doing with, if you I think people don't realize that with property, you don't need a huge amount of money. Yes, you do need to have to save something because again, it's an investment, right? And you need to be in a position to also service that debt over the years and years. But you you don't you don't. I don't know. I see people like, oh, like I live in Sydney and a house is like $2 million. Like, yeah, but that's the house you want to live in. Buying an investment property is different. You can
Mm.
buy like a lot of my best performing assets up. You know, I bought a house up here for like about 3 years ago. I think 3 years ago for 700K, and I got it valued about like 1.6 recently. So yeah, 700 to 1.6 in a couple of years. I bought another house here for 500K, and it's valued about $1 million in 4 years. Likewise, I bought my a house that I bought up here 4 years ago for a lot more, and we're struggling to sell it. And the big one, like, so that hasn't probably gone up much at all. So people often think, again, like investing, you need all this money. You do need some money because you're investing, yes, your money, but it's that initial thing. And then if it goes up, especially with property in Australia, like people have a lot of like hate towards things. And I get that because I've been on the other side where I had no money and never even thought about property. But once you start to improve your financial education, you also realize that if you can just get started and get in, which is the hardest part, that first 100K, whatever, is so incredibly hard.
Mm.
But then if you can then get in, then the game is really rigged in your favor to help you. It feels like the world's against you at the start, but if you can then, for me, the only way I did that was create value in myself, and then, was able to generate an income from the value I created myself to then do what I did. And then the benefit of investing is that, obviously, it goes up 10%, right? 10% isn't much on 10K, but 10% on $1 million, that's 100K. So there's scale to that compounding, and it's like that time. And so, yeah, it's trying to get in early, build up that portfolio, aggressively accumulate, and then give yourself time to then just let it do its thing and you just enjoy your life. And again, like, so yeah, so that's kind of my kind of, if I was kind of helping friends and stuff when I talk to them about property, like not everyone's trying to be like me. Like my goals are obviously different to
Mm.
other people, like, and but for majority of people, like you would be blown away about how well you could do if you could get into just a cheap property, a good property, like a good asset, the one that you probably, if you're new to property investing, think the exact opposite asset that you'd, something that is not fancy, something that's not brand new, something that's not, something that you'd probably want to live in, something that's older, big block, run down to some degree, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're the ones which are actually your gold mine to success in the future. And it's kind of, yeah. But the hard thing is kind of getting in the game and learning and trying and making mistakes and then, yeah, you can make mistakes and learn and hopefully not too costly so you can keep playing.